I love Megaprojects. I've got an entire channel dedicated to Megaprojects. There's something about feats of engineering and marvels of planning and logistic that just gets me excited. Not really. I mean, yeah, but also people like watching them. But let's be real, not all megaprojects are created equal. Some megaprojects verge on the barely useful, and some are just boondoggles. Be they the unfortunate result of official corruption, greed, the arrogance of man in the face of nature, or just plain old stupidity, these megaprojects that we're featuring today are just dumb. Let's jump in. Germany has spent centuries cultivating its image as the world's great leader in efficiency and design. It's a country where trains run on time and quality engineering is the rule. And perhaps that's what Berlin city planners told themselves when they called for design proposals for a brand new international airport, Brandenburg International Airport, BER, in the mid-1990s. This airport, meant to symbolize the reunification of East and West after the fall of the Berlin Wall, was a statement to the world. Nearly 20 years and 6.5 billion euros later, that statement sounded a lot like, we have no idea what we're doing. In hindsight, things didn't get off to a great start. When planners submitted a list of 7 potential locations for a new international airport for city officials, they naturally chose the option planners rated as the worst of the bunch, a spot 16 kilometers from the city center at Schoenfeld. The site's minor shortcoming was there was already a village there. Residents protested, as one might expect they would, at the thought of having their entire town replaced with an airport, and the project was immediately tied up in court battles for the better part of a decade. Great start. Eventually, 80 million euros was spent building a whole new village, and at least 600 million euros was spent on noise-proofing homes affected by the planned flight path. That was half the initial project budget gone before they even broke ground on the airport. But the pain was not going to end there. Courts ruled ultimately that the new airport would not be able to accommodate nighttime takeoffs and landings, and that there would be no further expansion to the original design permitted. So again, things were not off to a very good start. The city adopted a design by famed star architect Meinhard von Gerchen, design of Berlin Tegel Airport. Von Gerchen detested the tendency for modern airports to be little more than overpriced shopping malls, and he included only a handful of retail spaces in his design. It was not until 9 months into the construction of BER that city politicians realized that the site lacked the commercial space that it would need to, make money. This required 65% more floor space being added to the airport while it was already under construction. You didn't want to think about that ahead of time, guys? No? Okay. This was not the only last-minute change. For political reasons, specialized boarding gates for the massive A380 Airbus were also added, although no airline had then committed to serving BER with those planes. Similar changes continued long into construction, and the project quickly became a design nightmare. The budget eventually doubled, and then it doubled again. Oh, and the entire structure's fire safety systems, including automatic doors and smoke alarms, turned out to be shoddily designed and didn't pass inspection, forcing regulators to step in and prevent the airport from opening as planned in 2012. The airport management company proposed a human-machine interface, which is a fancy way of describing 700 safety personnel standing at every exit. City officials said no. It later emerged that Alfredo de Mauro, the man responsible for the flawed design of the fire control system, had secured his job with nothing more than a business card, claiming that he was a qualified engineer. He was not. Retrofitting the existing structure would cost additional hundreds of millions of dollars. Over the following decade, the entire airport had to be largely rebuilt, thanks to over 150,000 code violations, including faulty wires, unsafe firewalls, and lack of lightning rods. As if matters weren't bad enough, by 2015, it had become clear that the changes to the site to accommodate all of those shops and cafes were not going to work anyway. Many of these business locations depended on the assumption that BER would become a hub for international traffic, which, after all the restrictions placed upon it by regulators and courts, was just not going to happen. The only airline that expressed any interest in using the airport as a hub was Air Berlin, which was in financial trouble itself by 2015. The site also became a hive of criminal activity, with work crews stealing everything from copper to fiber optic cabling in the chaos of renovations to the brand new structure. Managers were discovered taking cash bribes in hundreds of thousands of euros for work contracts. And despite all of this, no one was ever deemed criminally responsible, so I guess we could say it wasn't a hive of criminal activity. Finally, amidst delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic, BER opened to the public in October 2012. It's an international hub airport that isn't a hub for any airline, an international airport that can't handle nighttime traffic, a futuristic tactical marvel that doesn't really work, and the basis for growth in a location where growth isn't possible. It's likely today the BER management company will face bankruptcy soon. All of these things make BER Berlin one of the most useless megaprojects ever constructed. Picture a city. Now picture that city compressed into a single horizontal line stretching 170 kilometers, that's 105 miles from the mouth of the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea, across the Arabian Desert and into the hills north of Tabuk. Now marvel at what a fucking stupid idea that is. It's a city halfway between nowhere and nowhere else, with no reason to exist and no means to which to support itself, produce anything, or grow anything. The line is a testament to the true meaning of the phrase dumb money. But before we set about savaging the concept of the line even more, let's do it the courtesy of evaluating it on its terms first. Why build a horizontal city in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert? Proponents, who seem to be almost exclusively employed by 37-year-old Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, argue that a horizontal city provides many exciting advantages for futuristic living. Those people are getting paid. For one thing, the layout of a horizontal city ensures that public transport will be a breeze, with several high-speed trains allowing its residents to zip from one end of the line to the other in about 20 minutes. Second, according to planners, the line represents a more egalitarian, futuristic city design in which the population of workers and elites have one continuous, harmonious chain of being, with service and public workers inhabiting the lower levels and the rich and powerful living in the upper layers, while every resident will have access to about the same amounts of sunlight and fresh air thanks to the city's horizontal orientation. Proponents conjure images of an AI-driven smart city without a single car, where knowledge workers stroll in expansive parks suspended high in the air between two enormous city walls. At one time, progressive city planners in places like Paris and New York touted the benefits of large uniform housing projects, their ability to provide each resident family with a similar amount of sunlight and comparable access to all public and private services. Such ideas have attracted people from all parts of the political spectrum. The real question then is not ideological, but practical. Can the line really work to create a better, fairer city for the future? In a word, no. As city engineers, urbanists, and architects have been quick to point out, the horizontal layout of the line may be attractive in theory, but it doesn't survive even cursory scrutiny. To begin with, transportation across the line might be universal, but it would not likely be practical. A train that can get you from any point on the line would have to travel at a top speed of over 500 kilometers per hour, and this would not include the extremely frequent stops that any train would need to make. And not only this, but a linear transport system is highly vulnerable to bottlenecks, such as those likely to be caused by accidents, fires, or power outages. The same vulnerabilities would apply to the city's water, waste, and electrical and IT systems, which could all be catastrophically disrupted by a fire or accident at any point in the city. Unlike a traditional two-dimensional city that can reroute water and power, a linear city could descend into chaos if any single segment experienced a catastrophic failure. Responses from planners that different city segments will be autonomously capable of operating all of these systems simply begs the question, why not just build these sections next to each other instead of a line? And as others have pointed out, current concept designs would be devastating to local wildlife and biodiversity, especially since the line would cut off hundreds of kilometers of coastline where life is most likely to be concentrated, even in a desert. There are good reasons why the typical city exists in two dimensions. Disruptions can at least be bypassed. Life can coexist with people. What traditional cities may lack in efficiency, they gain in resilience. A highly dense, horizontal city would be a breeding ground for disease, highly vulnerable to single-point failures, and just terrible for the surrounding environment. Another inconvenient fact of a horizontal city that bills itself as sustainable and self-sufficient is that people need to, eat. It's estimated that to produce enough food for the city to sustain itself, the line would need to be flanked by agricultural fields stretching 10 kilometers from either side of the walls. These need to be fed by at least 500 million liters of desalinated water from the Red Sea every single day. To accomplish this, a desalination effort 10 times greater than the largest existing desalination project on Earth would be required. And this all feeds into possibly the most critical detail that the Saudi prince may wish to just ignore: the project's costs. While the Saudis project a total cost in the tens of trillions of dollars, the true cost of the project might exceed even those staggering figures. As envisioned, the line could cost well upwards of, wait for it, $100 trillion. That's more than the annual GDP of the entire f***ing planet. So far, the Saudi government has committed just $500 billion. So, only 99 trillion, 500 billion to go. Today, hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens have moved into the country's sprawling new cities. It's happening all rather quickly. To give you an idea of the pace of change, in 2003, China had just 6 super tall skyscrapers, meaning buildings over 50 floors in height, and none were taller than 90 floors. Today, it has at least 120, with 12 reaching more than 90 stories. 2 cities in China have grown by 1 million people or more in just the past 10 years, and at least 50 cities in China now top out at over 2 million people each. And yet, as if this incredible growth rate was somehow not enough, China is facing a new economic problem. It's built too many cities for its population to move into. Central planning has ensured that whether or not the Chinese economy can accommodate the pace of growth, new cities have continued to be built. And while the country has become startlingly efficient at building new megacities, that hasn't necessarily meant that the economy requires all of this new space. Thus the rise of bizarre ghost cities, which pose a problem for the official narrative of the Chinese Communist Party, which would like the world to believe that China's miraculous economic growth is showing no signs of flagging. In 2019, around the last time it was still possible to report on the development boom in China, 60 Minutes Australia documented great empty cities built for millions of missing residents. Shop fronts are empty, street lights blink next to vacant bus stops. Empty shopping malls with automatic doors welcome nobody. It's as if the population, millions of people who should be there, just disappeared without a trace. And this isn't the only strange consequence of an economic plan that doesn't consider the practical challenges of moving hundreds of millions of people into urban areas where no one has lived before. 60 Minutes also documented what happens when local owners of existing structures don't give in to the demands of developers and planners. Older family homes sit inexplicably in the middle of 4-lane expressways. Traditional homes stand amidst the moonscape-like ruins of destroyed neighborhoods. And in the new cities, a handful of lit-up flats and a smattering of cars on the streets give the lie to the whole enterprise. Over half the population of China still lives on less than $2 a day, a fact that cannot be overcome by the availability of vacant new housing that no one in China can afford to buy. Over the past few years, the slow-motion collapse of the government-connected investment and development firm Evergrande has highlighted the crisis as China's economy and population growth have both screeched to a sudden halt amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Ironically, while entire cities sit empty, China's development firms have been plowing the retirement savings of China's middle class into new developments. For millions of Chinese home buyers, the flats and houses they've reserved, and in some cases have already begun to pay mortgages on, have not been built at all or have been constructed of shoddy materials clearly never meant to be occupied. Would-be home buyers are stuck living with their parents or in substandard city housing built to deal with the constant influx of workers in the urban centers where jobs are available with good pay. Ironies abound in this situation as the ghost city simply cannot be sold off to buyers, considering that there are few to no jobs in a city without a population. Businesses continue to concentrate in urban centers like Beijing and Shenzhen, where the population lives, creating a shortage of housing and manufacturing capacity, even as entire cities are built elsewhere. As China grapples with the COVID pandemic, entire cities are frozen in time, half built, and no one knows what's going to become of them.